Hey, y'all. The next topic on our show is going to be mental health, where we deep dive into our own experiences with our own mental health. This is triggering for you. Might want to skip this episode.
Take a minute or get your friend who really needs to hear it and make them listen with you.
Perfect.
Queer times.
How you doing over there?
Okay.
You sure? How's your mental health?
These days?
Yeah, I think it's a great time to talk about mental health.
Honestly, I've taken some steps over the past year or two to take better care of my mental health, and it has changed my life.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm actually doing really, really, really well comparatively to other times in my life in this moment.
I haven't noticed, but no, I'm kidding. Could you imagine? I was like, I don't know, seems the same, bro. All right, we're going to talk about mental health today.
Yeah.
I'm excited about this. I've had my own journey with it.
Same.
Let's go to the beginning, shall we? When do you remember mental health, like coming into your awareness of your own or of anybody else's? Like
for me, I think this has been a journey with my own mental health, is growing up. My parents were very work hard, pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of people.
If it ain't broken or bleeding, I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah, kind of.
I had that.
And luckily, I think me, my siblings, and my parents are fairly, I don't know if well-adjusted is the right word, but there was nothing dire when it came to our mental health.
Right.
I think a lot of other people felt it to be more real than I did growing.
Mental health?
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I had a family who, my mom had a therapist. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
But like the connection of what it was and why she went there was never really made. And I would be hard pressed to say that it made a difference in the general lived experience of the household.
Right. Well, for me, growing up, there was a couple experiences where in school I was singled out under the guise of mental health.
Wait. In what way?
Like made to spend time in the counselor's office.
Were you acting out?
No, I think.
Were you sad boy?
No, I think what it was is they were like, this kid's gay.
And we need to fix it?
I don't know if it was fix it or.
Did you feel bullied?
Yes and no.
Like by kids?
Yes and no. It was never something that I think was an issue. I mean, Did anyone go through elementary school without feeling bullied at a point?
I certainly was bullied.
Yeah. And I think everyone was. And once I think my parents kind of didn't want me to be singled out and made to feel different because I was different.
Right.
And I think in retrospect, that was a good thing. I think that was a good decision they made. I think they were like, yeah, we see how he's different, but I don't think he needs to be separated because he was different. Which is what it felt like.
When you say separated, this is intriguing to me.
I mean, I would go to like the counselor's office and like spend a half an hour like playing with random things and talking to the counselor.
But not everyone in your class had to do that?
No.
And did they pull you out in front of everybody? Was it one of those things where like, Mr. Fish, it's time to see your counselor? Because that was what happened to me when I had to go to speech therapy. And it was always this thing because I didn't say my S's, and now you can hear I say them a little bit too much. They overcompensated. But it was always awkward because they would be like, okay, it's time to go learn how to speak.
Yeah. No, I don't remember it being, I mean, honestly, I don't even quite remember it super well.
Okay.
That was kind of my first.
You just remember being othered under the guise of talk to the counselor.
Yeah.
Which could really create a weird dynamic in a classroom.
Yeah, but also it's like when you're that young, it was like, yeah, I don't want to learn about this garbage. I want to go play with toys with that woman who wants to talk to me.
Right. That's weird.
Yeah.
I feel like, were they trying to figure out if like you were being abused at home or something? Like,
I have no idea. I think they're like, I think one of the things is like, I was very social when I was younger. And I had no problem making friends, but I think they're like, oh, he's gay. He must be getting bullied. He must have trouble making friends.
Right.
Right.
That
wasn't me.
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
sure, I was bullied, but like.
I do think that those of us who are a little older feel like everyone gets bullied. And it would be nice if that didn't happen, but I do think that it does happen, and the best thing we can do is teach young people coping skills and ways to build their confidence, and not think that we're going to end bullying entirely at the moment, given the current administration.
Yeah, but I also think there is a more, rather than being reactive, it's like I feel like we should also like teach kids not to bully each other.
No, we should teach them that. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just saying that right now, given the culture, the dominating culture coming out of the White House, it's hard to.
Yeah.
I didn't know I had mental health issues until very late in life. I didn't know how to name anxiety. I probably to this day, I think about how my ex-fiance was like, kind of like, oh, you're probably depressed. I was like, you're out of your mind.
Yeah.
Right? Like that it wasn't in my awareness of something that I should address. And it's interesting, and you can't address it until it is. And you'll never know it until you know it. Yeah. And that's part of evolving and growing as a person.
That's kind of similar to my journey. Like as I went through my 20s and got into my mid 30s, it was kind of one of those things where I felt like everyone felt anxious throughout the day. I thought everyone was a little sad all the time. I kind of thought everyone had I mean, look at the world. Of course I was feeling dread.
Right.
You know? And then I think the wake up call for me was like, there was a point in time where I was like, I can't imagine something that would bring me joy. Meaning like I couldn't imagine anything happening that would bring me joy. And that's when I was like, maybe that's depression.
Yeah, I just drank. That was really, I drank in college when I was sad. I drank, and then I became a comedian, and drinking was the culture. Mm-hmm. And so it was really easy. And then, yeah, you'd be a little bit hungover, but as long as you can get to like 5 or 6 o'clock, just drink again. And then that is a great way to self-medicate until it's not.
Yeah.
And then one day, after feeling like I had a lot of anxiety and starting to acknowledge the alcoholism in my life, stopped drinking, and then still felt the same way.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, okay. And then come to find out, general anxiety disorder. She's a nervous Nelly. Which could be a result of nature or nurture. You know, there was a lot of, I grew up in a pretty tumultuous space, I should say. And so it really took me having suicidal ideations to realize that, oh shit, I'm crazy. You know, like it really took a very, very, very dark place. When I first moved to P-Town, I was a very broken person. And I remember driving a cab and being like riddled with anxiety, not just on Commercial Street, but just like being riddled with anxiety and like working and trying to not cry and like just having a very real chemical imbalance that I had never experienced before. And it really woke me up in a way to being able to identify, oh, wait, I am in a deep depression right now.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, this is a panic attack that I'm having right now.
Yeah.
And if you've never experienced them, you really don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. I will say it's really hard to say this when we live in a society right now that doesn't take any of your health seriously. Like that, like thinking about your brain health is more of a luxury than ever before because so many people are losing their health care, but it is as serious as a broken foot. Or, you know what I mean? Like I try to, when I talk to people about mental health, I try to, number one, reduce the stigma. Like saying that you're having a mental health issue is no worse than saying you sprained your ankle. Like it is part of your makeup. And as you go through life, certain things are going to break.
Right.
And your brain does more processing than anything else. And a lot of work. Your brain keeps it all running. So the idea that a component of it might shut down for a little while should not be stigmatized in the way that it is. And when it is stigmatized,
often seen as like a personal failure.
Oh, it's definitely seen as a personal failure. There is this weird disconnect that if you accidentally break your arm, we should all sign your cast. And if you accidentally break your brain, we should pretend like we didn't see it.
Right.
You know, and when someone does, I think there is also a lack of understanding and awareness of when someone, because we love to say, oh my God, take care of your mental health, girl, self-care, girl, your mental health matters. And then when we are witnessing someone battling mental health, we say, but you have to come to work.
Right.
Right? Like there's this thing, and I'm really trying to, and I do this with the young adults that I work with, is when you are struggling and your brain is feeling off, let's treat it like a sprained ankle. Mm-hmm. Let's rest. Let's stay off of it. You can't walk around on it. It's the same thing. If you continue to try to make it process things and work, you're not letting the swelling go down. You're not letting the bruising alleviate in your brain.
I think that's great. And also I think part of removing this stigma is being open to the idea that it could be happening to you, because that's something for me that held me back. I was never a person that like, oh, mental health isn't a real thing. Depression isn't a real thing. That was never me.
It's just not a real thing for me.
It's just not a real thing for me.
No, I was also, and I think that is a lot of people.
Because it doesn't feel like we were saying, it's your brain.
Right. So this is all I've ever known.
Yeah, it's all I've ever known. It's what's happening inside of me. It's like, and I wish we would be a little more open to the idea of it being a possibility for yourself, in the same way that like, oh, you get a little tickle in the back of your throat. Am I getting sick?
Right.
Like, wow, I couldn't get off the couch until 4:00 in the afternoon today because I didn't have the willpower.
Or wow,
maybe I'm getting sick.
Or wow, I just spent manically.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh wow, I just went on a shopping binge and I don't have the money for that. Mm. And what does that mean? Right? Like, I think it's more than just depression.
Yeah.
Right? It is anxiety. It like, there's just, I feel like that there's a lot of compulsive behaviors that are all connected to a broken brain. And we don't get the opportunity to connect those either, because we don't talk about it enough, because I just feel like our entire health system is so antiquated in all ways. And that the more people we make, the more different variations of people we make, and the more different variations of illnesses, both mental and beyond, are, I just feel like there was this thing where they were like, humans do this, and ones who have a penis on the outside, all their bodies do this, and you need to fit into this. And then we're just like ignoring all of the outlying people and humans on the spectrum of things that could happen to their brain.
Right.
And the idea that if we just put you in a hospital with other people, that will fix it. Other broken people. I don't know if you've had any experience with what mental health care looks like, inpatient mental health care looks like in this country, but it is bleak.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are opportunities for privileged people to experience a relaxing getaway that is also healing and restorative. The majority of people who have been broken by this system, who have to be put in inpatient, do not have a healing or restorative experience.
Right. They
have an experience of being drugged and having a minimum of amount of time where they're not allowed to leave. Like I've had friends go into the hospital and it was around the holidays. And so your 3-day, your mandatory 72 hours became 5 days because they can't work on the weekend. Right? And that is not casual to make someone stay inside of a hospital, a mental hospital, because you have banking hours. Do you know what I mean? And why is that? Because then they can bill your Medicaid or your Medicare or whatever it is, right?
Maybe this is so millennial of me, but I remember one of the wake-up calls of my own mental health was I saw this like tweet that was meme-ified.
Wow, something from Twitter helped you.
Yeah, I mean, it was meme-ified, so it was like screenshotted and put somewhere else, but it was like, oh, my therapist. And it was like, oh, have you been experiencing any feelings of depression or anxiety? And they said, don't we all? And the therapist said, no. And I was like, wait, what? Really? And I didn't quite believe it. I'm currently taking Lexapro. I've been taking Lexapro for about 2 years now. And it really changed my life. And I was like, wow, they were right. You don't have to feel depressed and anxious every single day.
No, you actually don't. You can just take a pill.
Yeah, it's not part of who you are.
Yeah, I had a similar but different. Mine was a thyroid thing, right? But it manifests in extreme hormonal imbalances, and the highs were very high and the lows were very low.
Mm-hmm.
And then they gave me a pill, and it changed everything.
Yeah,
and I was shocked. I've been on antidepressants before. I'm not currently on them. I have Ativan. No, I'm sorry. I have lorazepam. Not trying to be ahead of the game, but for flying. And for any acute panic, which sometimes comes out of nowhere when I least expect it.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
And that is just a thing that happens. Sometimes people have panic attacks.
Yeah.
And their body gets overwhelmed. And I feel like I've gotten really good at noticing the symptoms of a pending of an impending situation.
So you have kind of the wherewithal to kind of pull it back a little.
Right. So, for instance, I talked to Katie this morning about how the last 2 weeks have been intense days with a lot of emotional labor, as always happens when we start a new summer. And so we're planning that Sunday is my brain off day, right? Like just trying to figure out a way where I can unplug my brain, and instead of just going until it breaks, recognizing that we have been under intense stress for an extended period of time. And if I go longer than 3 weeks, I will have a break. And it will then lead to days of being out. So on Sunday, I'm going to not answer the phone really, or do as much as I can to withdraw and detach and let it just not process for a day. When you think about, I always try to think about my brain as a computer, because it is. Mm-hmm. And if you just left it open running all the time, you would run, I'm running out of RAM.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've got to make some space. And so it'll be just a timeout. And I feel like we should normalize that. And capitalism leaves us to be a place where if someone says they're having a mental health day, you go, but are you?
Yeah, I roll.
Yeah. Oh, you're having a mental health day. And I do think there's some validity to that, because we are not educated about it. And it's not easy to decipher between I'm in a bad mood or this is a depressive episode.
Right.
Because we don't talk about it enough. And if we would talk about it enough, I don't think, because I believe in humanity as a species, believe it or not, still after all of this, if we would talk about it more, I would think that more people would be able to decipher when this is a thing I need to call in for and when this is a thing I need to persevere through.
Right.
But we're not at that point right now. All we are is mental health. And so someone's like, I'm a little sad right now, and whoopsie, my mental health, right? But I think the more we explore the topic and the more we educate ourselves and people get educated, the more that we'll be able to fine tune when it's really a broken brain and when it's just, girl, you were out late last night.
Yeah. And I also like I said, I am on Lexapro, and I'm not necessarily advocating for medicating for your mental health, but I am 100% advocating for speaking to your doctor, talking about your mental health, speaking with people. The reason I say a doctor or a therapist is because they have the tools and the knowledge to be able to help you understand what's happening in your brain,
right,
and move towards solutions. Lexapro really works really well for me, but that's the solution. The problem was for so long is because I resisted the fact that I might have a problem.
Right.
And I think that is, if anyone listening, there's a takeaway. It's don't be afraid to take stock in your mental health and pursue solutions. And whether that is speaking to a doctor about medication or planning days to give your brain a break.
Especially right now. There is so much coming at us. And yeah, everything it all works differently for every person, right? Like I also, as someone who has been medicated, I would certainly be medicated again. And I think that is the other situation is that, so when I ended up on medication, I had just signed a contract to open up a comedy club in Buffalo. I was losing my mind. My fiance had left me. It was just not a good time in my life, right? And I went to see this therapist, and as I'm talking to the therapist, she's like, what do you got going on in your life? And I explained to her that I'm about to be the GM of this 300-seat showroom and this 150-seat restaurant that's attached to it. And we're in the middle of the build out. And I brought the Buffalo News with me, which I was on the cover of the business. And I was like, well, I'm doing this. And she literally just went, well, we're going to rock star you through the next 2 months, and handed me a pill and was like, this is where we're going to start, because it's clear you have to get through this.
Right.
It's clear that a timeout isn't an option right now. And so how can we, and I was on it for a while. I was on it for a little over a year. And then I lost my insurance. And when I left the job, and it was a situation where I was like, all right, I'm not going to have this anymore, right? Fortunately, the extenuating circumstances around me had lessened. I had a lot less pressure on myself by that point. And so I was able to take the time, and it was not pretty. It was not pretty. I was locked in a room having panic attacks and anxiety, and not really, like, so anxious that I wouldn't leave the room if my roommates were downstairs in the kitchen, really going through it. And probably should have still been medicated, quite frankly, but was not able to because I didn't have insurance. But I learned that, trying something new is helpful, and it's okay if it works, right? Like it's okay if a pill works for you. That's fine.
100%.
And it's okay if you don't need it the whole time, and then you are no longer on it, and then you recognize, ideally, 2 or 3 years later, when it happens again, oh, I should go see about this.
Yeah.
And not just suffer in silence.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was like, I didn't realize what the symptoms of my depression and anxiety were until they were gone. I was like, oh, this is normal. Like, it's been over a year since I've been terrified of going to the supermarket.
That's huge.
Like, you shouldn't be terrified to go to the supermarket.
You shouldn't be terrified to go to the supermarket, but as someone who is sometimes terrified to go to the supermarket, you shouldn't be terrified to, and it should be a normal thing. I do think that where we live is a different situation.
Yeah. Where we live, it's like you go to the supermarket and you run into 100 people
and you are forced into small talk. And that is really what I'm more afraid of, the small talk, not the grocery store.
Right.
But they're, and I think, and I don't want to make this about the female anatomy, but I do think that women experience this differently because we have a monthly anxiety-inducing situation.
Right.
So I can tell you when I'm premenstrual that my anxiety is very high, and there will be times that I'll drive up to this grocery store, and if the parking lot is packed, I'm not going in at that moment. And that is as much for everybody else's safety as it is for my own. But, I do think that the female experience of hormones and the fluctuation and what that does to anxiety specifically and depression is something that is a different experience than people who are born without uteruses and experience that hormonal influx every month, because that in and of itself is its own mental health fuck show. Like, I mean, I really can't explain. And now as somebody who's getting a little bit older and like there's like a perimenopause thing happening, and it's really sad to me how much something that every woman experiences is just not discussed, and not at all discussed in how it relates to mental health. And then, postpartum and all the things that come with, you're just a bad mother when you're literally chemically imbalanced to such a degree, but no one talks about that.
Yeah. And the people who have been the people deciding what gets talked about and what gets looked at and what gets studied aren't women.
No.
I looked up some statistics, and it does, in general, LGBTQ plus individuals experience significantly higher rates of mental health challenges compared to heterosexual or their cisgender peers. And when I hear that, I I wonder if that is, I think the experience of a queer person in the world now is depressing, is anxiety inducing. But also on the flip side of that, I also think queer people are made to check in more.
I think that's real.
So I think it's a double-edged sword of what causes that. I think on the one hand, this world is entirely set up for the health and happiness of straight white people, straight white men specifically.
Yes.
But on the flip side of that, I think the same reason they might be reporting lower cases is also the world is set up in a way that is also damaging to those people as well.
Say that again.
Meaning, like I said, like queer people might have more mental health challenges because the world is a difficult place for those people.
Right.
Or it might be that they check in more, that we're more in touch. And on the flip side of that, like, yes, the world is set up for cisgender, straight, white men, but at the same time, that same setup causes them to not be in touch.
Resist treatment.
Yeah, resist treatment.
Weakness.
Yeah. Like the trope of just like the absolute angry white man. And it's just
once again, our queerness has been our savior.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's challenging.
It is challenging, but I do think, I mean, listen, I will always say this. I believe that variances in sexuality indicate a more evolved person. I think that as a species, we're evolving. I think that probably bisexuals are the most evolved creatures. I'm a little anxious and jealous that I'm not.
I mean, before we move on, like that, you can also like, it's not only queer people who should free themselves from a heteronormative life. Straight people can also free themselves from that same heteronormative life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And be happier.
The idea of being a nonconformist, you don't have to do what everyone else is doing. And I think that was where I was going with the Paul Rubens thing. He was just really into, as someone who hid his sexuality throughout his life, was somebody who was so blatantly a nonconformist and wanted to inspire not only queer kids, wanted to inspire all kids to think outside of a box.
Yeah.
There's a really cool resource for mental health that I was a part of. I was on kind of like their advisory board when they first started. And the New Orleans Musicians Clinic is now called, hold on, the New Orleans Musicians Clinic and Assistance Foundation. And they have a program called You Got This. And it is a mental health and self-care online programming for creatives specifically, where they recognize that, when you are in the arts and you are a creative and you're a performer, your access to healthcare in this country is very limited. And so they started by offering just a health clinic. And now they've expanded to this program called You Got This. And it's available online. Just Google You Got This, New Orleans Musicians Clinic. And for me, I found it to be a great resource. And it has a list of both local New Orleans resources and national resources. Obviously the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the Crisis Text Line, Trevor Project for LGBTQ youth, Trans Lifeline for the trans community, Veterans Crisis, the RAIN, Sexual Assault Hotline. There are a lot of resources out there. And I think don't be afraid to ask for help in your own community. I think that is a really key component. Obviously, if you're somewhere where you don't have a lot of, like if you're in a rural area, a hotline is always there. But also, it's only scary to walk in the first time. Once you take that first step, all the others get a lot easier.
Right. And I just want people, my biggest takeaway, because it definitely changed my life, is like, you empower yourself to take charge of your mental health.
Yeah.
Because for so long, I just pretended and acted like I'm healthy.
Fine.
I'm fine. And all of these problems are just problems that I've created for myself or are my fault. And then I realized that once I was medicated, like the problems were still there. They were just much more manageable.
Do your parents listen to this podcast?
I don't know.
Can you recognize any mental health issues in your family that maybe they just sucked it up and made it through, like in your mom or your dad?
That's hard. Yeah. I wouldn't say that I recognize any.
Right.
But I
see my mom's anxiety. Right? Like I can see her mental health issues.
No, I hear you.
And so it's something that as I get older, I'm like, oh, right, the apple tree thing,
Right, totally.
As much as I hate to admit it.
Yeah. No, I think it's also so hard because everyone has mental health issues these days. People act like it's this exasperated thing that like, oh, everyone just has it now. And it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, well, 20 years ago, we didn't have a computer in our pocket.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you were not accessible.
Yeah, and that is a huge thing for mental health.
A huge thing.
Yeah. It used to, like 20 years ago, you used to have to call, and if they were home, if they weren't home, they just wouldn't answer, and you would leave a message and maybe they'd call you back. Now it's like people text you and 5 minutes later they're like, hello.
I do not suffer those fools. But I also say that to people too. Like if I text somebody, even one of the kids was like, oh my God, sorry, it took me so long. I was like, there's no obligation to be on demand for me unless that's agreed upon ahead of time.
Yeah.
Right.
There's also nothing that turns me off more is like someone messages blah, blah, blah. And then I understand when it's like, hey, just wanted to remind you if like I asked this question, but just like the 5 minutes later, the question mark, I can't stand that.
Wait,
like if someone asks you a question.
Yeah.
Like
and
say
then
you get
don't
a text
respond.
message and you don't respond, and 5 minutes later, they just like send a question mark.
I do dislike that if it is not a time restricted situation.
Yeah, totally.
And that will lead me to not respond to you until tomorrow.
Oh, it will lead me to never engage with you again.
Wow. Okay. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah.
Our exploration into mental health. You can follow, you can like, you can subscribe.
Please.
Queer Times Pod on the TikTok. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple. Tell your friends. Queer is in.